The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Victoria Home Chat. My name is Bruce McCallum. I'm a realtor with DFH Real Estate. And thanks for joining us tonight. We've got a great program. We're going to be talking about home inspections. But before that, I just wanted to talk just a little bit about Victoria Home Chat. It was just a little while ago that I started this program. And my purpose was to help homeowners. I think knowledge is power. And for those homeowners or homes buyers and sellers, I hope to bring you information that can help you, whatever your goal is. Also, it's important that these programs don't have any sales pitch. I'm not here to hype a product at the end. I'm just here to provide some good information that you can use. And also, it's important to understand that we've got some good interaction available as well. If any of you have questions, you can type in a box. I'll show you in just a second. But I encourage live Q&A here. And our guest speaker, Carrie, and I will be bantering back and forth a little bit. Victoria Home Chat is a weekly program. We broadcast, if you want to call it that, every Thursday at 8 o'clock Pacific time. And if you happen to miss it or if you happen to come in halfway through, we've got recordings that are available. Just a little housekeeping here. If you want to ask a question, you'll see a screen like this on your computer, and all you need to do is click on an empty box and type the question. And if you type that, I will see it on my screen here, and then I'll repeat the question. So to begin with, for those people that are watching, just type in where you're from, and we'll test this Q&A box. And if you can't hear my voice, you can type that in as well. And I'll just give it a few seconds here. Great. We've got some people from Langford and Colwood and Victoria. That's great. Thank you. Okay. Victoria Home Chat program tonight is 5 things to know about home inspections. But we're going to be talking a lot more about just 5 things. And it was last year that I met Kerry Smith from InspecTech, and we got along like a house on fire. And he's not only a great guy, but he's very knowledgeable about home inspections. I think if there are buyers out there watching tonight, you've probably known the value of a home inspection, and we'll be talking about that. But perhaps if you're a seller, you've never thought about it, and we'll be talking about the advantages if you're a seller. And that's some very interesting things you might not know. And there's also some long-term benefits about using a home inspection service. Now, I chose Carrie to join us tonight from InspecTech, but we're not going to be promoting InspecTech. I want you to understand that we're going to be talking about home inspections in general. And again, knowledge is power. So for those homeowners tonight, just sit back, relax, take notes if you want, but we do have recordings available. And we're going to get started and bring Carrie into the program. So Carrie, are you there?
Yeah, good evening, Bruce. I'm right here.
Great, great. Yeah, you sound good, nice and clear. Well, thank you for your time, Carrie. I know you're a really busy guy. You get up early in the mornings and you don't get home until 7 o'clock at night, busy doing your work, and I really appreciate your time tonight. Thank you.
It's my pleasure, sir.
Great. So tell us just a little bit about your business and your experience.
Well, InspecTech's been around for 22 years here in Victoria. I started in 1991, and prior to that I was a local builder, building houses and condominiums. My grandparents emigrated in the late 1800s. Grandpa was a builder. My dad and mom were born in Victoria. Dad became a builder, and of course I fell into the family curse and became a builder. Got my carpenter certification in 1974. And then in the late 80s, the idea of real estate building inspections started to develop in Canada. And there were a few fellows, local fellows, who had gone into that service. But I was quite surprised to learn that they didn't have a building background. One fellow had a clothing store before he became a building inspector, and the other fellow was an insurance adjuster. And it was the early 1990s, and I'd had quite a rough year as a builder. Built a bunch of houses, and prices went up and down, and we were struggling a little bit. And I thought, you know, if these coconuts can do building inspections with no training or background, I should be able to do it too. So I looked into it and started to incorporate this into our construction company, where we do building inspections for people that are buying houses. And the first year I did 13 inspections, which is no landmark, and you know, mainly construction. And then the second year I did 40 inspections and a little less construction. And the third year I did 200 inspections.
Wow.
And so I was pretty much out of the construction business altogether. And I was, you know, getting up there in years, and you know, construction is a pretty rough business, and you take a tumble every now and then, and I don't bounce as well as I used to. So it was really quite a nice transition, and that's what I've been doing ever since, doing building inspections for the good people of Victoria. And what's come up the last couple of years, because as I'm sure you know, Bruce, real estate is always changing. It's always in flux. It's a very vital, active part of life, part of business life and home life. And it's for anyone who's a student of human nature, it's really a wonderful arena to get involved with people at a critical point in their life, when they're about to spend $500,000, or whether they're buying a $20 million house or a $200,000 condominium. It's usually everything they have. It's a big event, and they've never done it before, or have only done it once or twice. And they're going to bring their kids up in this home, and they're going to park the car in the driveway and go to work every morning and have family events. And you know, it's people's lives are in their home, and it's really a wonderful service to offer your fellow man when they really need some good professional counsel and guidance.
That's right. Yeah.
And as a realtor, that's true, and it's certainly true as a building inspector as well.
Yeah, I agree with you. And in previous webinars, I've always stressed the fact that it's a team effort. You know, when you're selling your home or when you're buying a home, you need to have a team surround you. And what I mean by a team is a good professionals. For example, a realtor, a home inspector, a lawyer, and other professionals. Now, if we could move on here, tell us a little bit about how I introduced the idea of how this might be of value for a seller. Like I said, most people in a buying position have heard from the realtor, you need a home inspection. But I don't think a lot of sellers have heard that. So why don't you jump in here with that idea?
Well, we've been doing sellers inspections for probably 15 years now, but it's less than 1% of the number of inspections we do every year. It's a very small part of the real estate business. But I've noticed the last few years, the last 5 years, those numbers have been climbing. More and more sellers are starting to realize, and I think realtors and inspectors starting to realize that there really is some value in that. And the reason why is quite simple. A real estate transaction, by accident or just as things play out, as I was saying a little earlier, seems to be engineered to maximize the anxiety at the 11th hour. When people make an offer on a house, it's usually subject to financing and subject to an inspection. Sometimes, of course, as you know, Bruce, it's also subject to the sale of their existing property. But those first two subjects are pretty much standards. I'm sure they're in 90% of the offers. And the financing is the more challenging subject to be able to satisfy. You can hire a building inspector just by making a phone call. But sometimes it takes a few days, and you have to submit documents for a mortgage application. And so usually buyers get the financing clause dealt with first, because if they get the building inspection done first and then find out that there's some complications with the financing. That well, they wasted $300 or $400 on a building inspection.
Mm-hmm.
So get the financing done first, and of course, usually an offer has open for 7 days or 5 days or 10 days to allow the purchaser to get these subjects addressed. So once they get the financing approved, then they find a building inspector, and half of that week is gone, or 10 days. There's 3 or 4 days left before they have to remove all their conditions. And so we go do the building inspection, and inevitably there's just no such thing as a perfect house. Even brand new houses, we always find issues.
Exactly.
Ironically, and it might surprise you and your listeners to know, a new house inspection takes longer than a house that's been inspecting a house that been up for 40 or 50 years. There's a lot more detail in a new house inspection, which I'll explain later. I don't need to bore you with now. So we find some issues, and then there's 24 or 48 hours left before condition removal to address these issues. Maybe the sellers thought the roof was 10 years old because they bought the house 5 years ago and were told that it was 5 years old then, but they're not correct. It's actually a 20-year-old roof and it needs to be replaced.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe there's mold in the attic, or maybe there's some asbestos. It's an older home, or there's drain tile issues, and an offer of $400,000 or $500,000 is being made, assuming the house is in reasonable condition, and then we find out there's $20,000 or $30,000 worth of work to do. So they're after the inspection, the realtor and the purchaser are scrambling to try and get a quote to find out what's going to cost to fix these issues.
That's right.
And the clock's ticking. And then people's emotions get working, and it's quite a challenge at the last minute. So we're doing more and more pre-listing inspections.
Now, this is for the seller. We got to be clear here. This is for the seller, not the buyer. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. Sorry. A pre-listing inspection is for the seller. A pre-purchase inspection is for the buyer, where we'll come and look at the house, and it's usually all ready for sale, but sometimes it's just about to be listed, and we'll find out what the issues are right away. So it's not a surprise at the end, at the last minute, at the 11th hour, and then the sellers have time to either address this issue by having it repaired, or just disclose it on their property condition disclosure statement, so that buyers who come along, I've just lost your signal here, Bruce. The screen's gone dead for some reason.
Okay.
I don't know, but I can hear you.
Okay. Well, we're talking.
Oh, you're back. You're back.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
You just talked about disclosing it. If I can just jump in here, for those sellers that are listening tonight, I just want you to let you know that how important that is. The realtor that you're dealing with or will be dealing with has a property disclosure statement, and you are required to do that, and you have to do it honestly, because it can come back to bite you, and you have to disclose any problems. And I'm sure, Carrie, you've run into this all the time, where there's issues that aren't apparent to the casual observer.
Oh, absolutely, and of course, the property condition disclosure statement. You just call it a PCD now, or
PDS.
PDS?
Realtors call it a PDS.
Yeah, it used to be. There used to be another letter. It's predicated on the idea that it's to the best of the seller's knowledge. They're not required to be experts. To the best of your knowledge, is the roof in good condition? To the best of your knowledge, are the walls insulated? And of course, they're rarely experts. And so confirming what their beliefs are about the home is, of course, something that comes out of a pre-listing inspection. But so we'll discover a few things about the house. And then they can disclose those to purchasers, so that the purchaser doesn't go through this emotional ordeal of falling in love with some house that the realtor has shown them and making an offer, and they're just full of the spirit of the exercise, and then find out that there's some problems when they get their inspection done, and they crash and get all depressed, and it's just by the time buyers and sellers, by the time they've actually got the place sold, everyone's ready for medication. It's a really it's quite an exercise.
Have you found that when the seller does a pre-listing inspection, that most sellers are sharing that with a buyer.
Oh yes. Oh yeah. It's we leave our inspection report on the hall table at the house, so that anyone who comes through to view the property
Right.
sees the marketing material, the MLS sheet, but they'll also see this inspection report. And our reports, of course, are also on a CD and PDF form, so they can be emailed to realtors and their clients,
Excellent.
if whoever's interested in the property.
Excellent.
And it really fills out disclosure with some finality, rather than, I think the roof's okay, yeah, I think the hot water tank's okay.
Right.
It confirms these details. And for the seller, because they're either disclosing or repairing any issues, the chance of a buyer, which is what typically happens, making an offer, finding out there's some problems, and then renegotiating the cost of repairing those problems. So they've got the house listed for $489, but now they find out there's $20,000 worth of work to do, and they're only going to get $469 for it. And of course, that affects what they were going to buy. They've got $20,000 less than they thought. So when they have a pre-listing inspection, find out what the issues are, either repair or disclose them, so that when an offer comes along, they can't say that this vermiculite in the attic or this drain tile problem is a surprise. It was disclosed, so the purchasers made their offer knowing that the roof had to be replaced,
Right.
and knowing that the drain tiles had to have some work done.
Right.
So
And
they can't
this,
use that.
yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt, but this all relates to what we call a clean offer, and it has less subject to clauses, which is, and we can talk about this a little bit, which is of great value to a seller, because it's not only going to be perhaps a quicker removal of all subjects, but it's probably going to be a healthier offer as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It really is. I don't mean to belabor the point, but it's really an emotional roller coaster for buyers and sellers, but sellers particularly, because they got the house listed, they get an offer, and it's pretty exciting, and then the offer collapses because there's some issue with the inspection. It reduces the risk of that greatly. So it makes the offers more solid and more likely to cross the finish line and actually complete, when there isn't this gray area of, well, is it going to pass inspection? Is there something wrong that nobody knows? It's all confirmed beforehand. And a much better chance that you're going to get close to the asking price rather than negotiate it down in consideration of some defects that were found. And then probably the most wonderful part of a pre-listing inspection for sellers is, I'm sure most people feel this way. I know I certainly have. I've lived in my home for 10 or 15 or 20 years or some period of time. I've had pride of ownership. I've got the marks on the doorway where my kids were 4'10" and 5'6", and now, of course, they're all towering over me. and my life has been in my home. I'm personally attached. And I, in just the best of human spirit, I want to pass this beautiful home on to the purchasers, hoping that they will enjoy home ownership the same will, and their family will grow up in the backyard and swing on the tree tire and that kind of thing. And so it really relieves that to a considerable extent, the worry that, is there something wrong with the house that I don't know? Well, you can transfer it to the new purchasers with much greater confidence, knowing that it's been inspected and that the issues have been addressed, and the chance of something going wrong and these people having a problem in the future is greatly reduced. And in terms of future litigation, it happens where a house is sold, and then there's some question about the disclosure. It turns out the roof's no good, or there's some problem that no one knew. And the buyers, of course, they feel like they've been taken advantage of. They bought a lemon, and it ends up in court sometimes, where buyers will go after the sellers and say, listen, you should have known this, or we think you did know it and you purposely misrepresented the house. Well, what a wonderful answer that the sellers can have. Not only did we fill the disclosure statement out to the best of our knowledge, we went one step further and hired a professional to make sure that there was nothing we missed. So what more could we have done to fully engage the spirit of disclosure of the condition of the property. We even hired someone to inspect it for us, just to make sure that we had everything properly disclosed.
Yeah, that's so
Really
important
close
to.
the, yeah.
I'm sorry. It's like I was saying before. It's so important to surround yourself with a team of professionals. Not only will it result in a cleaner sale, probably more dollars, but also it reduces a lot of that stress, which is so important. And that's our job, your job, my job, and the other professionals, is to reduce some of that stress for the homeowner, or the home buyer, or home seller.
Well, it's interesting to hear you say that, Bruce, because that's exactly the phrasing that I use.
Yeah.
A team of professionals, and as you mentioned a little while ago, a property purchaser, for example, or seller, but a purchaser has hired a real estate agent, has engaged or has a connection with a building inspector, with a lawyer, of course, with a mortgage broker. Sometimes there's an appraiser involved, and they've assembled this team of professionals to help them, help support them through this fairly complex experience. And there's a lot to know. I always feel a little disappointed when people think, well, they say, well, how hard can it be to buy a house? I mean, I can read and write English. I can fill out an offer form. I can look at other houses in the neighborhood, and they decide to go without a realtor and what we in the trade call a FSBO, or for sale by owner. And man, oh man, that is just an accident waiting to happen. Here we have people.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
We have people who have never done this before, their first time out, and they're going to transact a legal contract and a business transaction worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, and decided, even though they've never done it before, and there are professionals available who go to training, who have 20 and 30 years of experience, no, we don't need their help. We can handle this ourselves. Well, in my business, when people phone up and they want to get a building inspection done, and I find out there's no realtor involved, I hate to say it, but I'm not really interested in doing that inspection.
Well, that's a topic for a future program. I'm going to be doing a future program on FSBOs, and I'm not going to be doing it to to hype or do a tremendous sales pitch for my realtor business, but I just want to lay out the truths there for those people that are considering that. So that's a whole separate topic that we can talk about. But tell us, since we're running on time here, that we should move on to, what do you look for a building inspector? I mean, there are so many firms out there. I do know that recently they have to be certified, so they have to go through certain coursework. But there are other things that perhaps you could talk about. For example, a construction background. I mean, it makes sense to me.
Yeah, well, Inspectec is a fairly substantial building inspection firm here in Victoria, and we have staff. We have several inspectors who work for Inspectec, and I have to hire building inspectors from time to time. And it's a growing industry, and there's people are getting interested. Their career changes, and they take the course and they pass. They study the books. And then I take them and I consider hiring them, and they come out with me on inspections. And even though they've answered all the questions and passed the tests and gone out on the various exercises they're supposed to do to qualify, they don't have the aptitude. And it's just so important to have that construction background as a building inspector. It's almost an unconscious thing. I don't know if you've ever had this experience, but you look at a car or a house or some object, and you don't know what's wrong with it, but something doesn't look right. Well, that comes from experience. That comes from having an aptitude. And in buildings, the same thing. I'll go up to a house and I'll look at it and there's something's going on here. Something doesn't make sense. I don't know what it is about that front wall of the building that bothers me, but something in my memory files and my own experience tells me there's something going on here. And of course, if you don't have a construction background, you don't have that aptitude, that instinct or intuition that is really the guiding light of a really seasoned, experienced, and of course trained a building inspector.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really the first building block of the whole thing to have, even if it's just working as a laborer after high school for a couple of years while you're putting yourself through university, but you know, to carry some boards around a job site and bang some nails and see how things are put together. It's really fundamental, and it's just kind of a detail of the real estate building inspection service that a number of building inspectors have gotten into the career without a construction background. They've studied the books, and I think they're missing a step, and it seems obvious to me.
So if we could give the audience a little word of advice here, when you're looking for a home inspection company, of course it's good to look for a company that's been around for a while, but do a little bit more digging. You know, find out about those people and what the actual inspector's background is. That's what I'm getting from it as well. We mentioned a little bit about certification and some of the coursework. Now, your firm and other good firms in the industry should have E&O insurance as well, shouldn't they?
Yes, they should. And there's actually quite a note of comfort for our listeners and people in Victoria and, well, in British Columbia, because from time to time there's news stories on the television where someone bought a house and the inspector turned out to be not competent, and you know, great tragedy and expense and problems for the home purchaser. Well, BC is the first jurisdiction and the only jurisdiction in North America that has compulsory government certification of building inspectors. Up until the BC government made this initiative, the building inspection industry was described as an unregulated industry, meaning there were no criteria that had to be satisfied in order for someone to call themselves. Anyone could get some business card printed up and say, I'm a building inspector, and they weren't breaking any laws. Ironically, there's a few other industries. Locksmithing is still an unregulated industry. Anyone can call themselves a locksmith. You can't call yourself an engineer unless you're an engineer. You can't call yourself a realtor unless you're certified by a governing authority. So that brought building inspections into the arena of professional service when BC made it mandatory. So what that means to the home purchasers and sellers in Victoria is all Victoria building inspectors are now certified. The fellows who weren't really making the grade are now out of the business in BC. It's a $5,000 fine for anyone to call themselves a building inspector and practice building inspection unless they're government certified. So the quality of the inspectors has just gone through the roof. The governing authority is CAPI, the Canadian Association of Home and Property Inspectors, and that's the organization that certifies building inspectors. And one of the requirements of CAPI certification is that the inspector carries errors and omissions insurance. $1 million errors and omissions insurance, and that, of course, as is probably apparent, is if the building inspector makes a mistake, there's $1 million insurance to back him up and pay the costs of any errors.
And further to that, as well, as we can see on the screen, reputation and references. And, you know, I think that this is, I'm a firm believer in gut feeling as well. I think that sometimes I choose people, of course, based on their experience and qualifications, but somebody that I just enjoy working with too. So and I think that comes into play here as well. You know, look for a home inspection company that you trust, that they have the backing, the certification, the E&O insurance, but also reputation, references, and just that little voice inside of you that somebody you want to work with.
Yeah, there has to be a little chemistry if you're gonna take part in that team experience.
Absolutely. So reporting. What to look for in a building inspector. Tell us a little bit about reporting. I mean, sometimes they have these huge reports, small reports on paper, CDs. How do you handle it?
Well, the key word is it has to be effective. There has to be a building inspection report. You can't just be verbal. because there has to be a record. The information has to be confirmed. It has to be communicated in some cases to the seller. Sometimes the insurance companies want a copy of the report, or the mortgage company wants a copy of the report. So you have to have a written report. There are a number of reports available. Some of them are as simple as just little tick boxes where it says, there's a heading called roof, and it says good, bad, fair, satisfactory. Well, that really doesn't tell the story, and it certainly isn't anything that could give a roofing contractor the information he needs to prepare a quote on repairing the roof. So you need a proper engineer style, what we call an anecdotal report, one that's written in English that describes the details of the home, gives recommendations as to suggested improvements, and possible costs for creating and those improvements and taking care of any repairs. Photographs, of course, are always very helpful. You know the old saying, a picture's worth 1,000 words. And then at the end of the report, there should also be a summary, just a short list of what the major issues are that can be quickly referenced by the realtor, the purchaser, or the seller to address any of the concerns that came up with the report. So it has to be anecdotal, it has to be written in English, not just a tick box. It has to have a summary, and it should also have recommendations for repair.
And I like the fact that you mentioned before that your firm is in a position to have it electronically, that you can have on your computer, or you can share with others as you see fit. You can email it and so on and so forth.
Yeah, that's what we do. We've been around a long time. We have a fairly sophisticated system. Another thing is the report really should be ready the same day at the time of the inspection, because as that 11th hour is approaching, sometimes there's only a day or two left. If you have to wait a day to get the report, well, of course, that's used up half the time you have left. You need it to be prepared really on site. The purchaser should really walk away from the inspection with their hard copy of the bound and printed report. It's quite important.
So let's talk, thank you, that's great to talk about that. 5 things to know about home inspections, the title of the program. In summary, maybe you and I can chat a little bit about this. Sellers, we both think that it's of great value, and it's a discovery tool, and it really can discover things that aren't really, you may not be aware of, let's say moisture behind a shower wall, something like that, and you have the tools to discover that. You can attract better offers, like you said, and quicker, because again, time is of the essence. When offers come in, subjects have to be removed within 7 to 10 days. For the buyers, again, you said it so well, it's an important step, and it can save repair costs. And again, it's in most cases it's what, $200 to $400, somewhere in there. And why risk that when you're dealing with your most valuable asset? For buyers, I think that it's important to inspect the inspector, ask around. And one thing that you and I were chatting before this began tonight, Carrie, is a warranty. Now, I don't think many people know about this, and this is something that is, in my mind, really a great value. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Well, it's turned out to be of great interest to purchasers. And incidentally, the warranty is for the benefit of the purchaser only. It's not for the benefit of the seller. It's only the purchaser can make a claim if there is a claim to be made on a home. It's for most houses it's about a $150 premium, and that buys a 1-year warranty on all major systems of the house. So the heating system, the roof is considered a system, the electrical installation, the plumbing system. So if your furnace goes on the fritz after 6 months of being in the home unexpectedly, it's a warranty claim. They'll either repair or replace the furnace free of charge. If the roof turns out to be shot or installed incorrectly, even though it's a brand new roof, it looks terrific. They have this company, they call it the Labatt's Roofing Company. They work for the Case-A-Beer Construction Company. It looks like a new roof, but was it installed correctly? Well, pretty hard to tell before a rainstorm. So you buy the house, 3 months later, winter comes, and your Christmas tree's getting wet. Well, you can call the warranty company, they'll replace the roof.
Fantastic.
And then if you can renew the warranty too in the second year if you want to carry on with it, just for that peace of mind. It's about $150 a year for most homes, and really an effective way of minimizing the risk and taking these things, chances of something major going wrong. Really,
well, not only that, but it takes away a lot of the stress involved.
Absolutely,
absolutely. The unknowns, which I think is fantastic.
There's one short point I should add, just to clarify something. The home warranty is available only on a house that's been inspected. It's because we transmit a copy of the inspection report to the warranty company. Because, of course, if the roof's already shot, well, they're not going to cover it as under a warranty. So they want the inspector to say the roof's okay. They want to know from the inspector that's confirmed the hot water tank is in good condition at the time of purchase. And of course, that's just common sense. So it's subject to an inspection, which happens in a real estate transaction anyway. And then gives 1 year free coverage on all these major components of the house. It really takes away the headache.
That's great. Let's move on to Q&A, and also I should remind the viewers that if they have other questions and they want to go into further detail, by all means contact Kerry, and we'll give the phone numbers there or his email as well. But we do have some questions that came in as we were speaking, Kerry, and I'm just going to read them to you. Is the time and the cost, how long does a home inspection take again?
Typically about 2.5 hours, depending on the house. Obviously, a castle takes longer to inspect than a condominium.
Okay.
But most houses, the average house, 2,000, 2,500 square feet, is about a 2.5 hour experience.
Okay. The other question that we've got several here, is the pre-inspection the same cost and same time as the buyer's inspection?
Yes, that's exactly the same inspection. We don't do any compromise service. We either do a full inspection of the home or no inspection at all. Sometimes people just want to have the roof inspected. They're not worried about anything else. We think that's flawed logic. If I'm going through the house and all I'm supposed to look at is the roof, and I find out there's full of asbestos around the furnace, am I supposed to not say anything? So it's just too important. You can't do a partial inspection, and so the pre-listing inspection and the pre-purchase inspection are exactly the same inspection. It's a full inspection.
Okay, good. How to check a chimney? The viewer is asking, do you check chimneys and fireplaces?
Yes, we do. It's part of the standards. You have to get on the roof to properly inspect a chimney or a roof, of course. There's a lot of inspectors who do the roof inspection with binoculars because they don't carry proper ladders with them. It's impossible. You can't do a proper inspection without actually getting up on the roof, looking at the mortar joints, looking down inside the flue lining. We've got a little spectroscopic device. I can lower down the chimney all the way to the firebox and the fireplace and examine every flue tile looking for heat stress or cracks or any kinds of decay or safety hazards that might exist. So there's some special equipment that's involved in properly examining a chimney and flue.
Now, I've also heard of something called a wet inspection for a chimney. What is that? And what's the difference between a wet inspection and what you're doing?
It's the same thing. We're wet certified.
What does that stand for, too? What does the wet stand for?
Well, it's an acronym for Wood Energy Technical Training. Okay. And it's just an organization that qualifies chimney sweeps, building inspectors, with respect to their ability and training and competence in inspecting wood stove, fireplace, and chimney installations. It's considered kind of a trade within a trade, and a specialized inspection of wood burning appliances.
Okay. Okay, but the important thing is that you're wet certified, which is nice to know.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's what you said. Yeah. The last question that we have is, if problems are found, do you normally give out a list of tradespeople that can come in and do some of the repairs?
Well, we're not supposed to. There's a perceived conflict of interest where if my brother-in-law is an electrician, well, am I going to be tempted to find him some work by pointing out electrical problems with the house that may or may not exist? So we're not supposed to recommend individual trades, but like realtors, I know 3 good electricians, I know 3 good plumbers, and being a builder for so many years, you know, I have an excellent connection with the trades network here in Victoria, and I'm very happy to assist people by, you know, giving a reference. So we would never say, you know, call Joe the electrician, but we can be a reference source to it in a limited way to purchasers.
Okay, that's great. Okay, that's great. Well, I think that's all the time we have for questions, and I think we're going to wrap up pretty soon. But listen, Carrie, I just want to thank you so much for your time. It's been really enjoyable, and I think we've all learned a lot. And I just hope that if people have further questions, that they'll give you a call or contact you directly. Your email, even though it's not on the screen up there, is inspecttech@shaw.ca. And what's your phone number again? The office phone, Carrie?
Oh, it's 250-920-8324.
Okay.
And we answer the phone 24 hours a day. So I just call, and we'll be more than happy to help.
Okay, great. Okay, again, thank you, my friend. And I'm going to move on here, but I'll chat with you soon.
Yeah, thank you, Bruce. Good night.
Okay, good night. Okay, folks, thanks very much for joining us tonight with Carrie Smith of Inspect Tech. The next Victoria Home Chat will be next Thursday, May 16th at 8 p.m. How to say goodbye to home heating bills. There's a very interesting home that's being built, and actually it's being completed very, very soon in Victoria, and it is achieving over 90% energy reduction. And in fact, they're just doing some technologies that you just won't believe. So we'll be talking to the builders of that passive home in Victoria, and we're actually going to try to get in the home and show you some live pictures. So I hope you stay tuned for that. And it's very easy to register. Just go to victoriahomechat.com and look up that particular program and register. And just to remind you, we don't keep your registration information to send out promotional material. It's simply so that your computer can accept a certain bit of software to view the program, and that's why we have to ask you to register. So thank you for joining us tonight. My name is Bruce McCallum, a realtor with DFH, and I hope that you've learned a lot tonight about all things about real estate, and especially tonight about home inspections. And there are recordings available. If you just email me or go to Victoria Home Chat, you can see a link there as well for the recordings. So thank you, and good night.